Maine is often portrayed through a single polished image, with beautiful coastal lighthouses, stretches of pine forest, and a peaceful dose of summer vacation. Yet when the travel compass turns away from the tourist route, a stark sociological reality appears in the state's deepest corners. There, the quiet New England landscape shifts into resignation under the weight of deindustrialization, the opioid crisis, and honestly extreme geographic isolation. Silent ruins of paper mill complexes, rows of boarded-up Main Street shops, and rural poverty and brutal winter conditions form the real portrait of communities left behind. Yes, this is an in-depth look at 15 small Maine towns now struggling at their lowest point. Entering Somerset County, Skowhegan stands as a living monument to the collapse of manufacturing glory in inland Maine. Split by the Kennebec River, this town was once a dynamic center of shoe and textile production, home to hundreds of blue-collar workers. The loss of its main industrial base triggered a massive economic decline in this town of around 9,000 people, leaving its downtown district with empty commercial spaces and a poverty rate now far above the state average. Its visual atmosphere is now dominated by the contrast between the remains of grand 19th century brick architecture and the social reality on the ground. Property crime and theft rates here are also among the highest for a small town in Maine, driven by the ripple effects of the substance addiction crisis. Walking through its downtown reveals a bleak scene of abandoned buildings standing beside overwhelmed social services. The journey moves west toward Oxford County, where the industrial town of Rumford is trapped in economic hardship and pollution. Born from the paper industry in the late 19th century, Rumford's landscape is fully dominated by a massive paper mill complex, standing on the banks of the Androscoggin River. The town is visually unique, yet intimidating. Factory smokestacks keep releasing gray-white steam against the hills, accompanied by a sharp sulfur smell that often stings the nose of anyone passing through. Although the paper mill still operates in part, modern mechanization has cut thousands of traditional jobs, creating chronic structural unemployment among local residents. This economic decline is closely tied to high rates of drug-related crime, making Rumford one of the red zones of Maine's rural opioid crisis. The tightly packed multi-family wooden homes built along the town's hillsides are now aging with badly peeling paint and boarded windows, creating the atmosphere of an old industrial town under heavy economic and social pressure. Moving far south toward coastal York County, we find Biddeford, a city that has historically carried one of the heaviest social reputations in the region. As a former giant textile center, the city suffered a total collapse in the mid-20th century when factory machines stopped running on a massive scale, triggering a surge in poverty and crime. Although in recent years the former red brick mill area downtown has begun to see revitalization through new apartments and cafes, Biddeford has not fully escaped its structural problems. Behind that modernized facade, its outer districts still face a large homeless population, sharp income inequality, and street crime that continues to shadow residents' sense of safety. Biddeford presents a fragile transition where the remnants of past urban poverty still visibly clash with the current wave of modern gentrification. We enter the extreme isolation of America's easternmost edge, where the coastal town of Lubec sits frozen in the silence of Washington County. Facing the Atlantic Ocean and the Canadian border, this town embodies pure geographic isolation and economic death. With its population shrinking far below 1,000 people, Lübeck feels like a vast ghost town, especially when the long, brutal winter arrives. Yes, its coastline is filled with wooden docks rotting and collapsing into the sea, while old New England pioneer homes stand rigid with paint stripped by salty winds, creating a melancholy view of a maritime community abandoned by its industry. Once this town was a prosperous center of sardine canning, but collapsing fish stocks and changing market regulations forced the last sardine factory to close permanently in 2001, cutting off its main economic lifeline overnight. Separated from Lübeck only by a rocky bay, Eastport has suffered an equally tragic fate from lost economic connectivity. Known as the easternmost city in the United States, Eastport sits on a small island linked by a narrow causeway, leaving it highly isolated from the main government center in Augusta. The collapse of its seafood canning industry and commercial port has pushed the city into deep stagnation. Today, Eastport's population has fallen sharply to around 1,200 residents, dominated by an aging demographic because there are just no jobs for younger generations. In winter, Eastport streets become eerily empty, like a silent corridor of time where the roar of the northern sea wind is the only sound dominating this slowly dying city. From the silence of the eastern coast, we return inland to Androscoggin County to see the impact of deindustrialization in Livermore Falls. This small town grew around a fast-flowing river, using water power to run large paper mills and lumber mills. When major corporations moved their operations away, Livermore Falls lost its economic vitality, pushing much of its population into rural poverty. The physical landscape of Livermore Falls shows, well, an aging, neglected manufacturing town. Many working-class neighborhoods are now poorly maintained, with yards filled with rusty old vehicles and buildings whose structures have begun to bend from age. The lack of new investment has worsened social isolation here, making it one of the rural areas with the lowest well-being levels in central Maine. Moving back south, Sanford presents a social crisis often missed by tourists. Unlike York County's coastal towns enriched by tourism, inland Sanford is a former textile town that has suffered long economic depression since the closure of Goodall textile mills. The loss of thousands of manufacturing jobs has left the town carrying a heavy social burden to this day. Sanford consistently records poverty and violent crime rates above the regional average for southern Maine. Drug addiction is deeply rooted here, driving rising homelessness in public areas and social tension downtown. The old factory complex, partly burned and still not demolished, stands as a grim visual reminder of the structural challenges the town faces in restoring community stability. From the south, we make a major geographic leap to far northern Aroostook County. Here lies Presque Isle, isolated among wide stretches of rivers and trees, although it serves as the largest commercial and service center in the north. Presque Isle appears on this list because of its extreme geographic isolation and severe climate pressure. Separated by hundreds of miles from the nearest major city, the town faces winters lasting nearly half the year, with intense snowstorms that cut residents off from the outside world. Beyond the brutal weather, Presque Isle is seeing a massive youth exodus due to limited job diversity outside large-scale farming and retail. Per capita income remains stagnant, while soaring winter heating costs create heavy financial pressure for low-income families. Returning to Somerset County's struggling corridor, the small town of Anson offers a real view of acute rural poverty in inland Maine. Sitting directly across from Madison along the Kennebec River, Anson once depended entirely on the wood and paper industries, which have now vanished from the area. The closure of local wood processing facilities killed the town's tax base, directly lowering the quality of public infrastructure and emergency services. Its daily scenery is deeply troubling for a New England settlement. Along its main roads, Weathered houses and abandoned empty lots have become common sights. Poverty in Anson feels deeply structural and generational. Just a few miles east of Anson, the small town of Athens deepens the portrait of rural Somerset County's decline. With fewer than 1,000 residents, Athens is the kind of inland forest settlement that's just, completely isolated from the modern economy. The town has no active commercial district, no local industry, and honestly, much of its area is just dirt roads cutting through dense woods. The harsh conditions here are reflected in the high share of residents living below the federal poverty line and the strong dependence on government aid. Many old wooden homes from the last century have been left to rot without renovation, while reaching the nearest medical facility requires a long drive. Athens presents a heavy rural gloom, where life moves in resignation under the shadow of structural poverty. Crossing toward the Penobscot County border, we find Garland, a small farming town that's, slowly forgotten by time. Once a small agricultural and sawmill community, Garland has now lost nearly all economic activity, shrinking into a quiet bedroom settlement. The town's physical appearance is dominated by an unsettling silence. The old town hall, in need of major repairs, stands near homes whose condition has sharply declined under spreading poverty. Hidden unemployment is also fairly high here, worsening social isolation, especially for elderly residents who are, really trapped in place. Moving into Washington County's poor corridor, Cherryfield stands with a sad contrast between its historic title and today's economic reality. Calling itself the blueberry capital of the world because of the vast wild blueberry fields around it, Cherryfield is actually in one of the counties with the highest child poverty rates in New England. Indeed, the seasonal blueberry industry leaves chronic unemployment during the rest of the year. Cherryfield shows rows of large Victorian homes from the 19th century, when the lumber and shipbuilding industries along the Narraguagus River still thrived. But that glory has long faded. Many of those historic homes now look worn with cracked wooden boards, and yards filled with tall weeds. Near the far north on the international border with New Brunswick, Canada, Houlton stands as an isolated, freezing outer checkpoint. As the final point of Interstate 95, Houlton sits at the end of America's main transportation network. This isolation is worsened by the collapse of local manufacturing and the shrinking agricultural sector that had supported residents since the mid-20th century. Houlton faces heavy social challenges, including high local poverty and few economic opportunities beyond border government work. Its downtown district, surrounding an old market square, shows many three-story brick buildings with empty vacant upper floors. When winter arrives with extreme below-zero temperatures, Houlton's streets turn into frozen, silent wind corridors radiating the deep loneliness of a border town cut off from the nation's main pulse of prosperity.